Today I am here with resident historian Nate, the man who did not completely disavow the existence of Yasuke and his entire ethnicity of people when Assassin's Creed Shadows was announced. So you know what kind of person Nate is over here. We're talking about Assassin's Creed 3 today because resident historian Nate thinks that his little history degree means that he somehow knows anything over here.
I know all.
And has some kind of statement that he wants to make about remaking Assassin's Creed 3.
And because I have a degree, everyone has to listen to me.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
You're like a professor at college. Except less of a degree, I guess. So anyways, we're going to talk about Assassin's Creed 3 today and what we would kind of do to rework some of it, because I think a lot of people, even people who wear Assassin's Creed 3 is their favorite AC game, which I think it was for you until Origins came out,
yeah,
right?
it's my second favorite.
And it's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time with like my top three here.
It's also my third favorite video game.
Of all time?
Yes.
Wow.
So I love this game.
So two of his top favorite video games are Assassin's Creed.
I have to throw down the credentials at the start of this video, so...
It's like anti-credentials at this point with how much people hate AC.
Right.
Anyways, we know that Ubisoft is certainly not perfect. That's like an understatement of the year. We know that this game has come and gone and it's probably not going to happen. But if we were doing Assassin's Creed 3 now with 2020 hindsight, there are a couple things that I think we would have changed. And by a couple, I mean quite a few. If you enjoyed today's video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, let us know what you think in the comments down below. We do make Assassin's Creed videos. I think this might be something like our 65th video on Assassin's Creed. So it's actually quite a few. And we also have played through some of these games over on our Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays. The link is in the description down below. When this goes up, I think we're kind of in the last stretch of AC1. And I did have a very brief question of the day for you, which is there anything you would change in Assassin's Creed 3? What would it be? I'm interested to hear that down below. So I think for me, the biggest thing with this game that frustrates me, and this is just me, is the friendship with George Washington. And I know, Nate, you had some thoughts on this too, because you've read some of those documents that George Washington was, sending in terms of like at the time. Obviously, the ones that have been preserved historically, a lot of them didn't. And you know some of the history of the revolution even more than I do. Something that bums me out about this ties into a point you made, which is the fact that in the latter stretch of the game, Connor just loses interest in the revolution, which I understand, but it leads to a lot of events being missed out on, and I would argue that it also kind of leads to a lack of build-up with this friendship with George Washington, that the game pushes almost like Connor and George Washington were like these really good friends. By the time of Tyranny of King Washington, they're friends again. Enough that George trusts Connor to contact him, to basically say, hey, look, this apple is messing with me, please take it. Even things like, the Benedict Arnold stuff, which played into the story. But I feel like a lot of the George Washington element is told and not shown. You're told that Connor's a better friend with George than you're ever shown that he is, like ever in this game. And that kind of bums me out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The frustrating thing to me about Assassin's Creed 3 with George Washington is they act like they're good friends throughout the game. And I know there's like a rocky relationship throughout the game, like especially in the middle part of it, between the two of them. But then they make up at the very end. But they do act like they're friends. They want to help each other out. They have mutual interests in the Revolutionary War, even though there is kind of some rocky relationships there. But you don't really ever get to see them together. They're together like you as the player are playing with him, not like you're told about it or something.
Or you just see it in a brief cutscene.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one thing that I would have changed about Assassin's Creed 3 is, first of all, have you with George Washington more. But second of all...
Well, wait, before we go on, when you say with, do you mean kind of
like the biblical no.
Like James Buchanan?
Yes.
Like that kind of with?
Oh, yeah, with.
Okay. Like Yasuke being able to be with men type thing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All
yeah,
right.
and I'm not judging that.
Resident historian.
Right. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
The second thing, though, about this is, and this is one of my biggest frustrations with the game is based around the Revolutionary War, but because you have 3 sequences of Haytham at the beginning of the game, which is literally a fourth of the game, it doesn't really leave a lot of time for you to play during events of the Revolutionary War. Now, I do want to point out before I further this point, I do think it would be a little ridiculous if Connor was just at every single possible Revolutionary War event. That wouldn't really make much sense
Right.
if he was just at all of them. But I do want to see at least a few more of them. Like, we never got to see Connor, like the George Washington crossing the Delaware into the Battle of Trenton.
Even though there was promotional imagery showing
Yeah, I know.
like official
Yes.
imagery of Connor there helping him cross the Delaware.
Yeah, why didn't we get to play as that? It's one of the most important events of the Revolutionary War.
But I do think that, like, you mentioned the crossing of the Delaware. I don't remember if you mentioned this or not, but the Battle of Trenton, the Battle of Yorktown, those are major things. And canonically, I believe he did have something to do with the Battle of Trenton.
I think he was there, yeah, canonically speaking.
But we never got to see it.
Right. Well, yeah, right, exactly. The Battle of Yorktown, I don't know if he is in there in canon. I have no idea.
My understanding in canon from what I was reading was that, and I guess I hadn't seen this when I played the game, so I don't remember if it's shown in like supplementary material or whatever, but my understanding was that assassin recruits were taking care of some of the Templars during the Battle of Yorktown.
Okay.
But that Connor was not actively battling at the Battle of Yorktown.
See, I think it would have been very cool to have Connor be at the Battle of Yorktown. And this is my big problem with the game is, you know, it's all based around the Revolutionary War, but I like the content we have. Like, I love the Boston Tea Party, the Paul Revere's Ride, Battle Bunker Hill. Like, I like the content we have, but I want to see more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the big problems with the game is we have 3 sequences of Haytham, which probably should have been 1.
Yes.
Let's be honest here. It probably should have been 1, max of 2.
Mm-hmm.
But you have 3 sequences of Haytham. You could have at least taken one of those sequences and add in a couple more events during the Revolutionary War so you actually get to experience the Revolutionary War.
And I think an idea that would be even better than that would be something like they did with Freedom Cry or AC Liberation, where you actually take Haytham and give him his own game.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Maybe not a huge one, but, you know, because if you gave him a prelude game, maybe something to tide people over, kind of like how Metal Gear did Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, where it was kind of like you're at this base and it's a playground type thing, and it was basically introducing you to the world of Metal Gear Solid 5, letting you play those characters and stuff. I would have loved to have seen something like that with AC, where maybe you have a game that comes out before AC3, it's a smaller game, it's focused on Haytham, you're Desmond, and then in the end you get the reveal, whoa, this guy was a Templar.
Yeah,
and then maybe in the very beginning of AC3, it recaps those events again in a cutscene the same way it recapped Altair and Ezio.
Yeah,
and
that
what
would've been
happened
great.
to Desmond.
I think that would have been great.
And actually, you could have given Haytham more time then, because obviously his game wouldn't just be 2 or 3 sequences, it would probably be like 5 or 6.
Yeah, you could make it 10, 15 hours of a story.
And I think
that would have been enough.
Then he would be even more humanized when you get to the world that Connor is in. But, you know, to your point, yes, you have those sequences as Haytham, but then you have a whole sequence basically of Connor as a kid and an adolescent, a teen, before he even becomes an assassin. So,
which I still think that should be in the game.
Right, but maybe that should have been the beginning.
Yeah, that should have been sequence 1.
Kind of like how we got Ezio being a civilian for a sequence.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, I get that, but like, why... It being like sequence, I believe, 4-ish?
4 is child Connor.
Yeah.
So you're all the way up to sequence 5 before you're playing as adult Connor.
Yeah.
In a 12 sequence game, which means 7 of the 12 sequences are the Revolutionary War.
And no, not even all of them, because they lost interest. Not only did Connor lose interest in the Revolutionary War, it felt like the writers lost interest by like sequence 10.
Right.
You know, the stuff going on with Charles Lee in the very end of the game, it's like Connor doesn't care what's happening with the revolution. He's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm dealing with Charles Lee and Haytham.
Yeah, which is kind of the weird thing to me is the middle part of the game is you in the Revolutionary War, which the game does talk about it being important for Connor. Like, specifically Connor and his people and so on. And yes, I know Charles Lee is mainly involved in that and whatever, but the game acts as if Connor is very interested in the Revolutionary War. It's mutual beneficial for him and George Washington. And then by the end of the game, he, like, doesn't care. So my thing is, like, why have a game based around the Revolutionary War if the writers don't even care really about the Revolutionary War?
Like, by the end of it,
yeah. You could have easily have had Connor... Maybe he's losing interest in the Revolutionary War. That's a fine storyline. But still have him participate in these battles, which is why I think the Battle of Yorktown was a necessary part of the game. Your experience of the Revolutionary War, why don't you have the ending of it shown?
Well, it doesn't even help that some experiences in the Revolutionary War are fun, but like they're not what they showed in the promotional trailers. Remember the trailer where it's like, Connor ducking through like all these fights and ducking through trenches and then like coming up and killing an officer and stuff.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And it was amazing. And I think that's kind of what people expected to an extent, right? Within reason, we know it's not going to be...
It's a cinematic trailer.
Yeah.
It's dramatized.
But, like, we expected that to be, like, the soul of what was maintained.
Yeah.
I think. And instead, a lot of the participation in the Revolutionary War is, like, now dodge cannon fire.
Right.
Now run.
Well, that's what the Battle of Bunker Hill is. It's literally like, hey, there's those cover rocks or whatever over there. Run over there once the cannons go off. It's like, whoa, you're at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Was that fun?
Yeah, but you're not really fighting many people.
But yeah, you're not doing
much.
anything.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, I don't know. Like, my thing is, I like the parts that are in the game.
Yeah.
I have no problem with them. I have no problem with the Battle of Bunker Hill.
You just told us why you don't, though.
Well, I do have a problem, but I'm saying I'm fine with it.
I think our problem is more that that's all there is.
Yeah,
like,
that's
I don't
my
think
problem.
we would have a problem with it if that was one aspect of it, but then there was also aspects that maintained that soul of, like, go into this, you know, area and kill as many of these British soldiers as you can, then move over here, there's a Templar type thing.
Right, exactly.
But they don't really have that. A lot of your participation in the Revolutionary War is running errands for people.
I know.
You know, it's that. It's like, Sam Adams wants you to deliver this bullshit.
Right.
Hey, Paul Revere wants you to drive him while he screams.
Yeah.
It's like, I get that Paul Revere, like, riding, you know, is interesting. But I'm saying, like, it's just another example of, like, you doing someone else's...
dirty work.
Yeah. But not actually having, like, fun objectives.
Yeah, the only part where you're having fun is, like, the Boston Tea Party.
And a couple
You're actually grabbing the tea and dumping it in the water.
And there was a battle or two, like, you know, that were interesting.
Right.
But I think that it says a lot that the battle parts were actually less fun than the normal assassination gameplay of, like, going into a fort on your own.
Mm-hmm. That was a blast.
Yeah, just like doing the forts.
Right.
And that was part of the Revolutionary War, but in the story it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Because they don't do anything with it.
So I think to recap the point, what we would rather have is take the 3 sequences of Haytham. So first of all, make Haytham its own game.
I would love
Just have that be in its own game. You don't have to have him in this game. Well, you do for like the villain purposes, but not as a playable character.
Right.
Take the 3 sequences of Haytham, add 3 more sequences to the Revolutionary War, specifically Battle of Yorktown, the crossing the Delaware.
Just because Connor lost interest, I don't think that means the writers should lose interest in the storyline.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what people want to see. People want to see the storyline.
Whether
of the
he's there or
Revolutionary
not.
War. Right.
I don't care.
Even if it's a cutscene. Yeah. I don't care. So that's kind of what we're saying. Take those 3 sequences, add them into the so we can see 3 more sequences worth of Revolutionary War content. Mm-hmm. That's what we're here to play.
If they ever remade AC3, I personally think this is the one I can think of the most off the top of my head that had so many missed opportunities I'd like changed.
Oh yeah.
Whereas
absolutely.
like AC4, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm good with that the way it is.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Like I don't.
And I love AC3 too.
Yes.
But there's it's just I love it so much that I want it to be better.
Right.
That's the thing.
Whereas AC4 is already so good, we're afraid they'll screw it up.
I know, right? I know.
I think it's funny the dichotomy between those. It's like, please fix 3, don't touch 4.
This is already perfect. Stop. Yeah, the other point we had too was, where are all the founding fathers in the game?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember, because I played through this game very recently, but it was probably a few months, 6 months ago. Does Connor ever meet Ben Franklin in the main story? Because there's a bunch of Ben Franklin
in the Haytham part.
And in the, no, not even a bunch in that. You meet him like once.
Right.
And he tells you about Find My Almanac pages. Which there's another thing. Once you do that, because you're probably going to finish it years later as Connor, doesn't even matter. Nothing comes of it.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
Right.
Doesn't matter. But secondly, mainly Ben Franklin is just in the Tyranny of King Washington, which is like an alternate reality vision.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if Connor ever meets him. If
he
he does, it's like once.
Right, if he does, it's not memorable. Because I was trying to remember it. I don't remember that. I remember Sam Adams actually matters.
Yeah, Sam Adams does. George Washington and Sam Adams are really the 2 that matter for founding fathers.
Yeah, and by the way, where was John Adams?
Well, that's what I wanted to get at. Let's look at some founding fathers here. Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
A big one.
And he's only in
He's in the Tyranny of King Washington. James Monroe.
Dang it, I thought it was
James Madison.
something for James Buchanan.
James Buchanan,
No,
where was him?
Don't say that.
John Adams actually somewhat makes sense because he spent most of the Revolutionary War over in Europe.
Well, so
He was actually an emissary to like Holland. He was emissary in Britain, France, things like that. So he kind of makes sense.
Ben Franklin was back and forth between
yes.
sleeping with women in France and
Yes.
pretending to get help.
He was
while
too. Thomas Jefferson was also in France too, but he came back to the United States.
And I think Ben Franklin did too.
Ben Franklin did also, yeah.
He wasn't there.
Thomas
the whole
Jefferson
time.
and Ben Franklin came back to the United States. John Adams spent most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time over in Europe during the Revolutionary War. But you could still have them in the game.
Right.
You know, it's not like John Adams is just non-existent. But James Monroe, James Madison, you could easily have them. James Monroe literally fought with George Washington. He was a soldier in the Revolutionary War. He's actually at the crossing of the Delaware.
Whoa, the thing we don't get to see.
Yeah. So it's like, where are these people?
Yeah, this is like such a
John
bummer.
Hancock, another one.
Dude, like, by the way, look at AC4. I know I keep going back to it, but a lot of notable events in kind of the decline of piracy happened in that game.
Yeah.
Even the death of Blackbeard, you're
I know.
present.
Yeah, they're
You
not
were
afraid to
present
show
for
them.
that. But for this, it's almost like they allude to it, and they're like, you wouldn't want to see that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I bought the game.
Right.
Was
It's
to
like,
see
I
that.
want to see this.
That is what I want.
Give us some Thomas Jefferson.
I think the biggest
I
example...
want to see Selling Hemmings.
Okay, so here's one that we just thought of. What about Betsy Ross with the creation of the American flag? You don't even meet this woman.
Right.
You don't meet her at all. There's like so many characters, and again, I understand that, oh, well, how many characters can you meet? We have a suspension of disbelief here. We're talking about a game where a specific man, who is a Native American, which, by the way, if this game came out now, it would probably be called out for this.
Yeah,
like, it would
right.
probably be a controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Helped ignite and fuel and continue the American Revolutionary War and met a bunch of founding fathers and was participating in and, you know, around a lot of key events. Like, you have to have some suspension of disbelief whenever you have these things. Same with Ezio helping perfect coffee's recipe.
Right.
And, like, same with Altair being at certain events, you know, like, these characters are made up. We understand.
Mm-hmm.
But our point is, they're already made up. Why not mix in some real history with that too?
Yeah.
And instead we get very little of that. It's just, you get some really cool blurbs in the codex,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I want to see that stuff. I want to be there. I want to participate in it.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing to me is the three sequences. We look at that, the three sequences of Haytham, and we go, this is wasted stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important to the story, but it should be its own game.
Should have been a build-up game. It
Or,
really should have
or
been.
at the most, 2 sequences in the game, and give us a full sequence more of Connor.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's all this interesting, cool things that happen in the Revolutionary War. We don't really get to see, like, literally 3/4 of it.
I did have one final point, which to me is one of the most important ones, but like, I'm already okay with the way it is because I played all the side content.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Connor's character development of being a person outside of the very end of the game and post-game, like going to Achilles' grave and stuff like that, a lot of his character development is missable. It's things like that, like, you know, going to visit Achilles' grave,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like specific dialogue that humanizes Connor further and like gives you an insight into him as a person, not just him as like a force of nature killing people.
Right.
Or things like the
Homestead missions.
and, you know, recruiting people for that and working with them and kind of building up almost a family there, like a found family storyline, or even different things like doing some of those Daniel Boone storylines, you know, some of those side missions where you were kind of going around as a frontiersman. A lot of those things are what humanize Connor as a character. So I think that those are already great. And I think that a lot of this criticism comes from people not playing those because Ubisoft has so much side content in their games that it's overwhelming. But I do think it's fair to say, why wasn't more of that just in the main story? Because Connor in the main story is much more stoic. He doesn't show nearly as much emotion. A lot of things happen around him, and I think a lot of people don't get to see the more vulnerable side of the character because they didn't take time to do those side missions.
Right.
I get that, like, hardcore people who love the game like us could say, well, then they should have played them. Sure, people should play them. I think they're great. But I do also think that it says something that characters like Ezio got those kinds of moments in both. You know, in the main stories and in the side missions. Whereas it seems like for Connor, they kind of locked most of that behind side missions.
Right.
Or, for example, the Benedict Arnold mission, which I believe was either a store exclusive mission, which was stupid, or it was a DLC like pre-order bonus. I don't remember which. So that kind of thing too, where it kind of showed some humanization of Connor. It's just all optional. I don't think that stuff should be optional.
Yeah, right. And that would have helped if you had one or two more sequences of Connor.
Exactly, instead of it just being that side content.
Yeah.
So anyways, I and resident hack historian Nate have come up with our ways that we would improve this game and completely humble Ubisoft executives like Yves Guillemot and several other people. Why are you laughing over there? That's how he pronounces his name very clearly.
Okay, got it.
You guys can let us know what you think in the comments down below. We like this game very much the way it is, but I really do think it could have been a lot better. So let us know what you think. If there's anything you'd change, if you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe for more content, we appreciate you very much. We do have our own store, which is cosmobunny.shop, where we actually sell repurposed comic book and manga and magazine resin pieces from paper that is going into usually landfills. It's usually not even getting recycled. What we do with this is we take it, we save some of that art, we create transformative art for your home, and then we make sure the rest actually ends up in the recycling. So, you know, something for you, something for us, something for God's green earth. It's all wins all around. Plus, we make like no money on these channels, so support of that goes to help us. And finally, speaking of that, we have our own Fortnite code, which is DJAY123. Plenty of other channels in the description down below, like Degenerate Plays, where we actually play through Assassin's Creed games and lots of other games, so we hope to see you there. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.